All right, let's talk about browser extensions. Those handy little tools we all use for blocking ads or snagging coupon codes. They promise to make our lives online so much easier. But what if that helpful little icon is actually a hidden doorway for something way more malicious? Well, let's dive in. We're about to see how these seemingly harmless tools can be twisted to do everything from stealing money to hijacking your most private accounts. It really makes you wonder, do you actually know what that extension is doing in the background? Okay, so check this out. An extension called Amazon Ads Blocker. Sounds perfect, right? A simple tool you get from the Chrome Web Store that promises to clean up your Amazon shopping experience. And yep, it does what it says, but its real job, its main purpose, is something it never, ever tells you about. And that hidden purpose brings us to the first major threat, a quiet, incredibly clever kind of theft that targets the wallets of content creators all over the internet. And it all revolves around something called an affiliate link. So, you've seen these a million times. Your favorite YouTuber recommends a product, you click their link to buy it, and they get a small kickback from the sale. It's a massive part of how creators make a living. But this is exactly where the heist begins. Here's how the scam works, and it's slick. You click a link from a creator you trust, but in this split second before the page even loads, that Amazon Ads Blocker extension springs into action. It scans the link, finds the creator's affiliate code, and just swaps it out with its own. The creator gets zilch, and the extension developer pockets the cash. You, the user, you never have a clue it even happened. And this, right here, gets to the heart of the lie. The extension's store page might vaguely mention it earns a small commission from time to time, but it conveniently leaves out the part where it's actively stealing commissions from other people. As security researcher Kush Pandya puts it, it's a total violation of trust, built on false consent. And look, this isn't just unethical, it's flat out against the rules of the Chrome Web Store. There's something called the single purpose rule, which means an extension is supposed to do one thing. Mashing up an ad blocker with a secret commission-stealing machine is a blatant violation. There's no gray area here. It is explicitly forbidden. So, stealing commissions is bad enough, right? But believe me, it gets so much worse. The threat level escalates from here, because some malicious extensions go way, way further. They're not just after a few bucks from a sale, they're after your personal data. Just try to imagine an extension that has the power to read anything you copy to your clipboard. I'm talking passwords, private messages, bank account info. Researchers at Symantec found extensions that do exactly that. Not only that, but they were also stealing browser cookies, logging every single thing people searched for, and even injecting their own malicious code into legitimate websites. And this isn't some small niche problem. We're not talking about a handful of victims. The extensions that Symantec flagged had been installed by over 100,000 people. That is a massive number of users who were just unknowingly bleeding their most sensitive data out onto the web. And just when you think it can't get any scarier, the attackers are, of course, already moving on to the next big thing. And it's a target that many of us are using every single day now, our AI assistants. Get this, security researchers recently busted a whole coordinated network of 16 different extensions. They all disguise themselves as helpful ChatGPT mods or add-ons. But their real purpose? To steal the one thing that would give them total control of your AI account. What they're after is something called an authentication token. The easiest way to think about it is like a digital key for your account. Once an attacker steals this key, your password becomes completely useless. They don't need it. They can just walk right in. And the consequences are terrifying. As security researcher Natalie Zargaroff explains, it's not just about them reading your old chats. An attacker with your token can completely impersonate you. They can access every conversation, all of your data, any sensitive code you've been working on. If you use AI for your job, this is an absolute nightmare scenario. So we've seen financial theft, and we've seen massive data theft. But this final evolution of the threat is maybe the most alarming of all, because it's a tool that's designed to fool even the most careful, security-savvy people out there. You know how we're all taught to check the URL in the address bar to make sure it's the right site before you log in? Well, a toolkit called Stanley makes that advice totally worthless. Here's how it works. You go to your bank's real website. The extension then puts a pixel-perfect, completely invisible fake login page on top of the real one. The URL bar is correct, the little security padlock is there, but every single thing you type is being sent straight to the attacker. And the really wild part is this isn't some secret weapon used by elite government hackers. It's a commercial product. It's for sale. For a couple $1,000s, literally anyone can buy this malware as a service toolkit. And if they pony up for the $6,000 premium package, the sellers guarantee that their malicious extension will pass Google's official review and get published on the Chrome Web Store. It's just unbelievable. This quote from researcher Daniel Kelly just hits the nail on the head. We do everything in our browsers now. Work, banking, communicating with family. We have to start realizing that the browser itself has become the main battlefield for our digital security. It's the new endpoint, and you can bet the attackers have noticed. So, the next time you're about to install some cool new extension that promises a handy feature, just pause for a second. As our browsers become the absolute center of our digital lives, it's really worth asking, who exactly are we trusting with the keys to it all? All right, let's get right into it. If you're deploying any open-weight large language models, there's a new, really covert threat you've got to have on your radar: sleeper agents. And no, I'm not talking about spies. We're talking about AI models that have hidden backdoors, specifically trained to wait for some kind of trigger before they go rogue inside your network. Today, we're going to break down a brand new tool from Microsoft that's designed to help you find these threats before they can cause any real damage. So, let's just cut to the chase. This question right here, this isn't just theory, it's a serious operational risk we have to start addressing, like yesterday. As we bring more and more AI into our stacks, especially from third-party sources, we have to work under the assumption that one of them could be a sleeper agent. So we're going to look at how these backdoors actually work, and more importantly, how this new class of tool can help you hunt them down. Here's our game plan. First, we'll define exactly what this sleeper agent threat is. Then we'll get into the weeds on Microsoft's new scanner, what it is and how it actually works. After that, we'll talk about the practical side of things, what this means for blue teams, for defenders on the ground. And finally, we'll zoom out and look at the bigger picture for AI security. Okay, so what exactly is a sleeper agent AI? You need to understand that this is a totally new kind of covert attack. It's fundamentally different from the vulnerabilities we're used to hunting. We're not talking about an exploit in the application code. This attack is embedded directly into the model's logic itself. The technical term for this is model poisoning. And here's the critical part. It happens way upstream, during the training phase, long before that model ever lands on your servers. A threat actor can just intentionally feed it bad data, data that embeds a hidden malicious behavior and ties it to some kind of secret trigger. This rogue logic gets baked right into the model's DNA, its core weight. And here is why this is such a headache for us in security operations. You know, traditional vulns are in the code. We've got mature tools, SAST, DAST, we know how to find them. But with model poisoning, the code can be perfect, totally clean. The threat is hidden in the trained logic, those millions or billions of parameters that dictate how it behaves. The main takeaway here is that our existing security scanners are completely blind to this entire class of threat. It just goes right by them. That's why we need a whole new approach. This is why that sleeper agent analogy is just so spot on. A poisoned model will pass all your standard evaluations with flying colors. It'll answer questions normally, it'll generate code just fine, it'll seem totally normal 99.9% of the time. But the second it sees that hidden trigger, which could be a specific phrase or even a weird sequence of characters, it wakes up and executes its malicious payload. So the big question is, how do you defend against a threat that your existing tools can't even see? Well, that's the exact problem Microsoft's new scanner is built to solve. It's a new kind of tool designed from the ground up to sniff out these sleeper agent AIs. So what's so special about this scanner? Well, first off, it's lightweight. That means you can actually run it without needing a supercomputer, which is huge for practicality. Second, it's built for open-weight models. That's key. We're talking about models where you have the actual files, not just access through an API. And third, and this is the real game changer, it can detect backdoors without knowing what the trigger is ahead of time. Think about that. It means you can find threats you didn't even know you should be looking for. Okay, so how does it actually do that? It sounds a bit like magic, but it's not. The scanner is designed to look for 3 specific statistical signals, basically telltale signs, that tend to pop up whenever a model has been poisoned. Let's dig into what those signals are. These are the 3 main giveaways the scanner hunts for. First, there's a weird double triangle attention pattern. Just think of this as the model getting hyper-focused on the trigger words in a way that is just statistically abnormal compared to its usual behavior. Second, it looks for leakage of the poisoning data itself. The model might say accidentally spit out a bizarre phrase that was only ever used during its malicious training. And third, it tests for fuzzy triggers. This means the backdoor might fire even if there's a typo in the trigger phrase. That's a huge red flag because it indicates a backdoor that was trained to be really robust. And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from the researchers themselves, Blake Bullwinkle and Giorgio Saviri, really gets to the heart of it. They found these measurable, repeatable patterns deep inside the model's guts that are strongly correlated with poisoning. So this isn't guesswork. It's a completely data-driven approach to detection. So the scanner's workflow is actually pretty straightforward. First, it pulls out memorized content from the model. Then it isolates suspicious-looking text strings from that content. Next, it scores those strings against the 3 signals we just talked about, and the output isn't just a simple yes or no. It gives you a ranked list of potential trigger candidates that your analysts can then take and investigate further. Okay, let's bring this back to the real world. What does this actually mean for us on the ground? How can blue teams, SOC analysts, and security operators use this thing? And just as important, what are the limitations we need to be aware of right now? So what does this mean for your security program? Let's break it down. For detection, the playbook is pretty clear. You should be scanning any new open weight model before it gets anywhere near your production environment. For response, if a model gets flagged, your immediate action is to isolate it, take it offline, and kick off a deeper forensic analysis. And for prevention, the scanner basically becomes a new essential verification gate in your AI supply chain security process. Now, it is really important to be realistic here. This scanner is not a silver bullet. First, it only works on open weight models, where you physically have the files, so you can't point this at a proprietary API-based model like GPT-4. It's also most effective against backdoors that have a consistent, predictable output. It's a really powerful new tool for sure, but it's just one piece of a much larger security puzzle. It's a huge step forward, but it's not a panacea. And that really brings us to the bigger picture. This tool is an awesome tactical solution, but it points to a much larger strategic shift in how we need to think about security in the age of AI. You know, Microsoft is taking this so seriously that they are fundamentally updating their legendary secure development lifecycle, the SDL, just to handle AI. For anyone who's been in security for a while, you know that's a major deal. It's a huge signal that our traditional security playbooks just aren't going to cut it anymore. You see, AI brings a whole new set of headaches. Our attack surface has just exploded. Think about it. Every user prompt, every plugin, every API call is a new potential injection point. The whole concept of a trusted network zone gets really blurry when a single AI model can access data across your entire organization. And enforcing data sensitivity, it becomes a nightmare when the model can just flatten context and potentially leak sensitive info from one conversation into a completely different one. This quote from the research team really sums it all up perfectly. They know this scanner is a meaningful, practical step that we can actually deploy today. But they also recognize that winning in the long run is going to depend on the entire security community, all of us, working together, sharing what we learn, and building on this kind of work. So what's the bottom line here? Sleeper agent AIs are a real and serious new threat. But the good news is we're starting to get the tools to fight back. Microsoft Scanner is a significant step forward and something you should definitely consider adding to your security toolkit. But this is just the beginning. The real challenge for all of us now is to evolve our defenses, to move beyond just securing the code and start securing the very logic of these AI systems. The only question is, are we ready for it?
Today, we're diving into a malware campaign that's less like a computer virus and more like a ghost. It's so sneaky that it actually uses the trusted, built-in parts of your own computer to hide from sight. So, how on earth does it pull that off?
It's one of the biggest questions in cybersecurity, right? How can a malicious program run on a computer without setting off any alarms? That's the puzzle we're going to unpack today. And the answer, as you'll see, is pretty clever and, honestly, a little bit scary.
And here is our answer. Researchers have uncovered this campaign, and they've called it DAD-VAX. Now listen to the words they use: disciplined tradecraft and clever abuse. That tells you everything. This isn't some sloppy, noisy malware. This is a sophisticated operation built from the ground up to be a ghost in the machine.
So what's the point of this whole complicated multi-stage attack? Well, it all comes down to delivering one very specific and very nasty piece of malware.
And that malware is called async rat. Now, if you haven't heard the term, a remote access Trojan, or RAT for short, is pretty much what it sounds like.
It's a tool that gives an attacker a secret key to your computer, letting them have almost total control from literally anywhere in the world. And when I say control, I mean total control. They can see every single key you type, capture your screen, even flip on your webcam without you having a clue. They can see what you copy and paste, rummage through all your files, and run any command they want. Put simply, it is a complete and total invasion of your digital world.
Okay, so how does something so dangerous even get onto a computer to begin with? It all kicks off with a really deceptive trick.
It starts how so many of these things do, with a phishing email. Someone clicks a link and it downloads what they think is a PDF. But it's not. It's actually something called a virtual hard disk, or a VHD file. So when you double-click it, Windows doesn't open a document, it actually mounts a whole new virtual drive on your computer, just like plugging in a USB stick.
But why a VHD file? Well, as the folks at SecureNix point out, it's an incredibly effective way to dodge security. Because mounting a virtual drive is a legitimate feature of Windows, a lot of security software is programmed to just let it happen. The attacker isn't breaking down the door. They're strolling right past the guards.
All right, so the attacker has their foot in the door. That virtual drive is mounted and ready to go. What happens next is a very carefully planned sequence of events, all designed to spring the trap and unleash the real payload. So inside that new drive, you see what you think is your document and you click it. But it's really a script. That script then runs another script that's been scrambled to be almost unreadable. And here's the smart part. Before it does anything bad, the script checks to see if it's being watched in a researcher's sandbox environment. If it thinks the coast is clear, it uses PowerShell, a powerful tool that's already built into Windows, to inject the final piece of malware.
And this right here, this is the key to why DeadVax is so tough to spot. It's what we call fileless malware. See, traditional viruses write a bad file onto your hard drive, which your antivirus can hopefully find and scan. But DeadVax, it never does that. It loads its malicious code directly into the computer's active memory, leaving almost no forensic footprints for security software to follow. This fileless living-in-memory approach is what truly makes it a ghost in the machine. It operates without a body, without a physical file to scan, which makes it incredibly hard to pin down. So let's look at exactly how it stays so invisible. The main technique here is called process injection. Think of it this way. Instead of trying to sneak a new, suspicious person past the security guard, the malware just hijacks a trusted employee who's already inside. It injects its code into legitimate Windows programs that are supposed to be running. By hiding inside these trusted processes, all its activity just blends in with the background noise of the computer.
And the tradecraft here is just so disciplined. It picks really common processes to hide inside, like OneDrive. It sets up scheduled tasks so it can start itself back up after a reboot. But my favorite part is how it uses these sleep intervals to literally pause itself for moments at a time. This keeps its CPU usage low so it doesn't cause any suspicious lag that might alert you that something is wrong. It's the definition of moving slow and quiet.
This quote from the researchers really just sums it all up perfectly. The bad stuff never touches the disk, and it runs inside programs you already trust. This whole fileless model makes finding it, as they put it, substantially more difficult. It's just not playing by the rules that most security software is built to look for.
So this brings us to the bigger picture. What does an attack like DeadVax really mean for the future of cybersecurity? Well, it represents a huge modern challenge that defenders are facing every single day.
This is the big takeaway for everyone. Attackers are changing their playbook. They're moving away from simple viruses and are now building these complex attacks that abuse trusted features and live only in your computer's memory. And they're doing it all for one reason: to bypass the very defenses we've all spent years putting in place.
And that is the absolute core of the challenge. You look at each step by itself: mounting a VHD file, running a batch script, executing a PowerShell command, and each one can be a perfectly legitimate normal activity. Security tools that only look for one obviously bad thing are going to miss this entirely. It's only when you can see the entire chain of behavior that the malicious picture becomes clear.
And that leaves us with this final, critical question. Attackers are getting better and better at becoming ghosts in the machine. So the challenge for the good guys isn't just about scanning for bad files anymore. It's about learning to see suspicious behavior. It's about connecting the dots across a long chain of seemingly harmless events. The question isn't just if our defenses are ready, it's how quickly can they adapt to hunt these ghosts.
All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're digging into two really sophisticated China-linked cyber espionage campaigns that are running at the same time, and they're both going after government and law enforcement agencies across Southeast Asia. You know, this is a fascinating story about what happens when super-fast exploit weaponization collides with classic social engineering.
So, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll set the scene. Then, we'll dive deep into each threat actor. That's Amaranth Dragon and Mustang Panda. After that, we'll look at their common playbook, and then we'll wrap up with what's probably most important for you, the key defensive takeaways.
So, what's the big picture here? Well, what we're seeing are two separate but very likely coordinated campaigns hitting targets in Southeast Asia. And the targeting is incredibly precise. We're talking about government, diplomatic, and law enforcement groups. And the timing? It's no accident. These attacks often line up perfectly with sensitive political events in the region, which tells you they're trying to maximize their intelligence-gathering impact.
On one hand, you've got Amaranth Dragon. Think of them as the techies, moving at lightning speed to turn a new software bug into a weapon. On the other hand, you have the well-known Mustang Panda, who are masters of social engineering. So yeah, they use completely different doors to get in, but their end goal? It's exactly the same. Get in, stay quiet, and collect geopolitical intelligence for the long haul.
Okay, let's start with our first group, Amaranth Dragon. The thing that jumps out right away is just how professional they are. We're talking serious technical skills and operational discipline. This isn't some noisy spray and pray operation. Nope, it's highly controlled, it's stealthy, and it's designed from the ground up to avoid being seen.
So the heart of their initial attack is this vulnerability in WinRAR. But here's the really wild part. The speed. Amaranth Dragon had a working exploit for this thing just 8 days after it was publicly disclosed. 8 days! That kind of turnaround time tells you you're dealing with a team that's incredibly well-resourced and just waiting to pounce on new opportunities.
Their whole attack chain is built for stealth. It all starts with a simple RAR file, probably sent in a spear phishing email with a Dropbox link to look legit. The moment that file is opened, the exploit triggers. From there, they use a technique called DLL sideloading, which is a huge favorite for these actors, to load their custom Amaranth loader. That loader then reaches out, grabs the final payload, the Havoc C2 framework, and runs it directly in memory. So clever because it helps them stay off the disk and avoid antivirus detection.
And this shows just how flexible they are. In one campaign that was targeting Indonesia, they didn't use Havoc C2. Instead, they switched to a custom-built tool, a remote access Trojan that actually uses Telegram for its command and control. This thing, the TG Amaranth Rat, is a full-featured backdoor. It lets them list processes, take screenshots, run commands, and shuttle files back and forth, all while hiding their traffic inside what looks like normal Telegram chatter.
Now let's shift gears and look at our second group, Mustang Panda. They take a totally different approach. They basically prove that you don't always need a fancy new software exploit when you can just exploit something way more common: human trust.
This quote from the research just nails it. Mustang Panda's entire game is built on creating believable phishing lures, things like fake diplomatic summaries or policy documents. They go after officials who work in diplomacy and international relations because they know these are exactly the kinds of files those people are supposed to open as part of their job.
Their attack chain is just a masterclass in what we call living off the land. So the user gets a zip file, and inside there's a shortcut file, an LNK file. Clicking that kicks off a PowerShell command, which then uses a native Windows tool, tar.exe, to unpack a hidden archive. This drops a totally legitimate signed program that just happens to be vulnerable to DLL sideloading. When that legit program runs, it accidentally loads the attacker's malicious DLL. That DLL then decrypts and runs the final payload, which is a custom version of PlugX called DoPlugs. And get this, the whole time, the user is just looking at a decoy document, completely unaware of everything that just happened in the background.
So we've got two very different ways to get in the door. But here's the interesting part. When you zoom out a bit, you start to see these big overlaps that really suggest a shared playbook, or at the very least, some kind of coordination between these two groups.
Yeah, this gives us a really clean side-by-side comparison. You can see the different paths they take for initial access and the different final payloads they're dropping. But look at the targeting. It's super consistent. Both are laser-focused on government and diplomatic sectors, all in the same part of the world.
Now, here's the critical thing to understand. All the evidence points to these not being isolated incidents. The operational hours, they line up perfectly with China Standard Time. The geopolitical focus is clear.
And from a technical standpoint, both groups are really big fans of DLL sideloading. For Amaranth Dragon in particular, the way their loader is written links them directly to the bigger APT41 ecosystem. And that connection is so important because it suggests they might be sharing tools and infrastructure, which means a good defense against one could actually give you a leg up against the others too.
Okay, we've gone through the what and the how. So now let's get to the most important part. What do we actually do about all this? Let's take all this intel and turn it into real, practical defensive steps you can start thinking about today.
Look, your defense here has to be layered. Number 1, patching. Seriously, the Amaranth Dragon attack just falls apart if that WinRAR vulnerability is patched. Second, you have to monitor your living off the land binaries. Ask your team, when was the last time we legitimately used tar.exe on a workstation? Third, harden your systems against DLL sideloading. And, of course, technical controls like blocking LNK files at the email gateway and good old-fashioned user education are absolutely non-negotiable against social engineering pros like Mustang Panda.
So to wrap this all up, these campaigns are a perfect example of attackers who are fluent in both technical exploits and human manipulation. Just defending against one or the other isn't going to cut it anymore. So the real question to take back to your team is this: how is your defensive strategy evolving to see the whole attack chain, not just one little piece of it? That's the challenge we're all facing.